Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to this live podcast interview here at CDMO Live 2025. Today, we are diving into one of the most pressing topics in our industry, which is around how CDMOs can navigate growing complexity, rising expectations, and increasing risk in the supply chain without compromising on quality or speed. Very, very happy today to be joined by David and Martin from Qualifyze. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves briefly in a moment, and a company that's really been making waves with a new approach to supplier qualification and risk management. So we'll get into the questions in a moment, but David and Martin, welcome to you both. Would you just give us a brief introduction to yourselves and your roles, and then we'll get on with the podcast.
Glad to be here, Chris, to speak to you again and to be here at CDMO Live. I'm Martin. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Qualifyze, and with that, I'm responsible mostly for the technology side, the platform that we're building, the way that we leverage the data, and the way that we make it useful for our clients.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us here. Great space, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David, and I'm the CEO of Qualifyze. So launched the company a few years ago, several years ago actually, and now active, as you were mentioning, the supplier auditing / qualification space, but also in the supplier side risk management space. So thank you.
Wonderful, and obviously a real pleasure to have you both here and also associated with the podcast studio as well. So thank you. What's changed most in the conversation around supplier qualification and risk in the past 12 months?
Yeah, happy to take this one. So first of all, maybe instead of looking at the last 12 months, given recent developments, let's maybe look at the last, let's say, 1 or 2 quarters, because that's probably where we've seen the biggest amount of changes. And first of all, risk is always a function essentially of volatility. And I think everyone agrees that volatility in markets, also in the pharmaceutical industry with regards to tariffs, has actually increased. So if companies work with a certain set of suppliers with their current supply chain, the question obviously comes up, am I still able to work with the same suppliers, with the same setup, at the same economic conditions? And the answer that many of the companies are giving now is probably not, but we don't really know. So essentially what this will mean is that you will need to look at alternative configurations of your supply chain. And this will entail at looking at different suppliers, probably only in certain regions, which means your supplier space is going to be limited. The number of sources you can work with will probably be limited. You will need to re-qualify or qualify new sources. You might even need to register those new sources with the regulators. We've also seen quite a few changes at the FDA, for example, so probably processes at the FDA will also take more time. So generally, I would say risk levels have been increasing, qualifications are probably becoming more complex, they will take longer, and people are now looking for alternative ways to compensate basically for this risk, and essentially by using technology to speed up processes, to learn faster, to connect data points, to make faster decisions, especially when it comes to looking for new suppliers, but also qualifying them faster and more effectively.
So that makes perfect sense. Now how is Qualifyze and the Qualifyze approach different from traditional audit and compliance models?
Yeah, I think so. Keep in mind, we started as a pure auditing company in the early days. And I would say at that time, there wasn't so much difference, frankly. We were basically doing audits, which is essentially a risk prevention tool, I would say. Very quickly on, we started adding a technology layer on top, and I think this is really unmatched in the industry. And by essentially combining all those data points with AI, with technology, we're able to derive more strategic insights. So I would say moving from a nice to have, I just need to do more audits to be compliant, more towards a strategic lever of using the data coming from the audits, combining it with different data points to derive essentially value that essentially is able to move the needle on a more strategic level, not just on a more tactical level. And I would say that's probably the biggest difference compared to the competition or to alternative audit companies. And I'm not aware that any auditing companies offering insights from audits to essentially predict risk. So I would say that puts us in a very unique position.
Okay, great. And then thinking a bit more about the CDMOs, which obviously is a huge part of our focus this week here at CDMO Live, how can a smarter supplier data ease pressure on CDMOs dealing with tighter timelines and margins, etc.?
Yeah, so I think this was also part of the discussion also in the previous keynote speaks basically talks mainly around what do partners look for when they actually work with CMOs? What do CMOs actually look for when they work with other partners? And one aspect that actually came up with speed. How can you actually essentially be faster? How can you make decisions faster? And actually also, especially for big pharma, when they work with CMOs, what is relevant for them is the quality aspect. So I think one thing that we believe will change, and we're actually seeing this, is a more shift to also technology, especially in the quality space. How can you work more efficiently with your CMOs? How can you exchange data more efficiently? How can you communicate more efficiently? And today, these problems are often solved by people, which are essentially also cost. And I believe here technology can really help improve this, but also by essentially providing more data to make smarter decisions. I think this is also how you can potentially push products faster to market, find partners quicker, accelerate the qualification process of those partners. And here we really believe there's actually room for lots of improvement, but also where the industry is already taking a few steps, especially when it comes to technology. We're seeing quite a few initiatives. They're not always very targeted. I think people are still experimenting, but I think the direction is definitely the right one.
Okay, Martin, coming on to you, what does proactive quality management look like in practice?
Yeah, so I think if we're looking at traditional models, quality management and supplier risk management has been heavily reliant on audits, right? And basically almost entirely. But audits are only a snapshot. And proactive risk management goes beyond that, right? It doesn't just look at compliance, where audits are perfectly fine, but leave gaps in risk management. Proactive risk management looks to stay ahead of issues and work with suppliers to really address potential risks before they turn into issues. And here we kind of see three major shifts. Number one, audit data is becoming more objective, more metrics driven, and less of an opinion. That's how audits are changing. We're seeing that customers are looking at more continuous monitoring. They're looking at other forms of getting information from public data sources or from questionnaires. And the third one is there's an increased drive to collaborate better, to share data among teams. So that's really a new approach for supplier relationship management, I would almost say.
Okay, and Martin, staying with you, you mentioned consistent information sharing. How is QF helping teams break down silos between quality, procurement, supply chain?
Yeah, so first thing I would say is people and teams naturally want to collaborate. Most people that we work with, most teams are really trying, but historically they've been held back by processes and tools which silo information and silo the way that things are done. And what Qualifyze does is we align stakeholders around data, and not only do we give everybody access to the platform independent of the department, so you can add any user to look at the same information, but we're also making the information available through technology, through an API, through other means of connecting to feed the information into the tools that you are using. So into the quality tools that quality is using, into the procurement tools that procurement is using, and so on. So everybody's looking at the same information, but from a different perspective, and to make different decisions. Quality makes decisions around kind of supplier performance from a quality perspective. Procurement looks at optimizing their sourcing strategy, and supply chain can, for example, look at changing their batch testing strategy if they see early signs of decreasing quality in a supplier.
Okay. And what kind of decisions is your new platform, Quality Insights, helping teams to make?
Yeah, so the Quality Insights platform is built on the largest data set of audits globally, ours. So we've built this over the last couple of years. We're very confident that this is the largest that's there. And obviously that's a huge amount of really valuable data that's not easily available anywhere else. We complement this with public and semi-public information, again, to kind of get around this frequency topic and get a bit broader. But in terms of decisions that are being made, or the questions that our customers need to answer, it's really how risky is my supplier portfolio, number one, right? That's kind of the typical question. And the decision there is, do I need to change the way that I audit them? Do I need to change my audit planning, or do I need to change resource allocation to more risky suppliers? The second one being, how can I accelerate or de-risk product launches? And if I have a view of this information in a way that I can easily digest it, I can make a decision around, is it sufficient that a supplier that I'm working with is actually pre-qualified and I don't need to wait for the full official qualification process to end before I work with them? Or do I actually, on the other hand, find them quite risky and I should have an additional audit before I work with them? So in either way it can work. Normally, of course, you're trying to accelerate. And maybe third one is, third big question is, should we adjust our sourcing strategy, right? David has mentioned the current environment where everybody's thinking about it in terms of tariffs and changes in globalization. And here, being able to have a market view of risk data on suppliers and being able to benchmark similar suppliers really, really helps to have a better strategy in place. Yeah. And in general, effectively, what Qualifyze is trying to do is to move to more data-driven decision-making and less gut-driven decision-making.
Which makes a lot of sense. Martin, thank you. David, back to you. What will compliance look like 2 to 3 years from now?
Yeah, I think that is a very good question. I think what we're actually seeing at regulators is that they're trying to build something that actually looks at linking different players in the supply chain. So not just looking at your tier 1 risk, but actually going all the way down. So what I actually believe what will happen in the future is that compliance will extend beyond what is directly visible, but the expectation will be that you need to go much more deeper into each site and much more deeper into your supplier network, basically. And in the future, things will be much more digitized. So it will not just be show me an audit report, but actually show me data. Show me how you're complementing your risk assessment. What additional sources are you actually using to form your opinion? Are you using just your own data, or are you complementing it with external data? So I believe the expectation is actually significantly going to go up on this side. Yeah. But it will obviously also take time, which I think is good for the industry. But as with all the things, we believe technology will accelerate the requirements also in the regulatory and compliance space.
Okay, and a final question then. So obviously here at CDMO Live this week, we have a lot of outsourcing, external manufacturing leaders. We've also got a lot of CDMOs. From your perspective, one piece of advice that you would give to the CDMO leaders here today?
Yeah, so I think there's lots of uncertainty in the market. I really tend to believe that challenges always represent an opportunity, and I think actually now is really the time to take a step forward, to really set yourself apart on a variety of different items. I think we've heard different topics today, from pricing strategies to quality to becoming more flexible. I think there's many different opportunities, but I really believe now is the time actually to invest and to actually go stand out from your competition by being actually proactive, by doing maybe even taking more aggressive steps now, so that you're actually prepared for what's to come in the next decades. So I think it's a huge opportunity, frankly, and I'm very positive about this. Great advice, and I hope you'll have the chance to speak to some of the CDMOs here today in person. I'm very sure you will. David, Martin, thank you very, very much for your insights today. It's been fascinating to speak with you. Also, I'd like to also say thank you for your support and sponsorship for the podcast studio here at CDMO Live.